All right, let's bring in Eric Herschmann, former deputy White House counsel and a former assistant DA in Manhattan, for more analysis on this. Eric, thanks for joining us. We should point out that he is in Jerusalem, where he has been living, but he's been following this case very closely. And Eric, I wanted to ask you, first of all, how much damage do you think Todd Blanche did to Michael Cohen in the cross-examination this morning when he got him to admit that he stole some $60,000 from the Trump organization?
I think Todd has done an amazing job. I think this is just another point of reference who Michael Cohen really is. He's a liar, he committed tax evasion, and now we had to admit under oath that he actually stole from the person he admired the most. I thought it was a devastating fact for Todd Blanche and to benefit, obviously, President Trump.
Well, Eric, we're left wondering how this is all going over with the jury. That's what matters.
You know, I've tried a lot of cases in Manhattan, and I was a senior trial attorney in the Manhattan DA's office. I think that any jury would be wondering, what is this case about? And I've had enough trouble myself in talking to former colleagues, trying to understand it. When I was a prosecutor, Robert Morgenthau was the well-respected, long-time district attorney of New York. I can't conceive of a situation in which he would have ever approved a case like this. Yeah. And as you know, I've not been willing to do. I'm sorry. Go.
No, I was just going to say that you know Carrie Kupek very well. She was over there at the Department of Justice when you were at the White House. She said that in a case like this, which is precedent-setting, the first time a former president of the United States has been hauled into court, you want to make sure that the case is rock solid and airtight, that everyone should clearly understand why this trial is happening, that the facts are understandable, the law is clear, and the witnesses are credible. It doesn't seem to meet that bar in any way, shape, or form, Eric.
It's not even close. I will tell you that I hate to bring up a peer of mine who worked with me in the DA's office, but Eliot Spitzer and I were contemporaries. Mm-hmm. If this was a legal theory that people had heard of or ever dreamed humanly possible, then Eliot Spitzer's conduct in New York State would have been the poster child for bringing this type of case. And they never did. And no one would ever even consider bringing a case like this because it's unprecedented. And in my view, you don't test the new legal theories from the DA's office when you're dealing with the President of the United States, a presidential election, in what has to be described as one of the worst witnesses anyone has ever seen.
Based on that, statement, Eric, where do you believe that the prosecution goes next with this as we do await official word that Cohen is back on the witness stand?
I think they're going to try to do the best they can to try to rehabilitate at least some part of him, to say, well, you did get these payments, and this is generally what it says in the paperwork. Mm. But I don't see a scenario where he can be rehabilitated. It's hard to understand how the judge is not going to grant a directed verdict since there's no evidence that links President Trump to any record-keeping whatsoever. I just don't understand it. And I don't think all of my colleagues and all the people that I worked with in the DA's office have all said to me, Eric, go out and talk about this. You have the experience to address it. And they actually have all unanimously, whether they like President Trump or are never Trumpers, have said they're embarrassed by the DA's office bringing this type of case, and it has destroyed the integrity of my old office.
Well, I mean, you can be embarrassed by what the DA is doing, what Alvin Bragg is doing. You can have your opinions that this case isn't worth the paper that it was printed on. But well, here we are in the courtroom, and the case is going forward. You defended the president in his first impeachment trial. If you were on his defense team now, what would you do after the prosecution rests and it's your turn?
Well, I think I would consider calling Bob Costello, but it would be very, very limited. It would be, did you advise Michael Cohen? Did he make certain admissions to you? What did he say? And then that would be the end of it. I don't think I would get into anything else with him and limit the cross-examination from the DA's office onto that subject. But I don't think I'd put President Trump on the stand.
Got it, because that's still a question at this hour. A little bit of a teaser. We have a legal panel coming up next. They both shook their head, no, don't do that, right when he said possibly bringing Costello as a witness. But we are left wondering if the former president is still considering, as he had said kind of long ago in the past, that he was willing to testify.
I think that he would discuss it, but my belief is the advice of his counsel would be do not do it in light of the rulings by the court. It would make the cross-examination a total chaotic circumstance.
Yeah, Eric, just in terms of calling Bob Costello, I mean, the testimony that he gave to the subcommittee on weaponization of government was completely contradictory to what Michael Cohen was saying on the stand, but completely in line with what Cohen was telling everybody, including me, back in 2018, that the president didn't know about this, he didn't have anything to do with the payment, that he didn't get paid back, anything like that. But if you put Costello on the stand, does that not open him up to all of these inquiries about what was his relationship with Giuliani, what was going on, were there back channels, or did Todd Blanche effectively take that out of the picture with his questioning of Cohen this morning?
I think what Todd did was leave open the door to potentially call Bob. My personal belief is I probably wouldn't do it, but if they're going to do it, it would have to be very, very, very tightly tailored.
Just getting a readout. That's slow to update here, but after lunch, the judge said he read through the testimony of Dr. Browning from C-SPAN. He reads through some of it aloud in the courtroom. He agreed that proper evidence is relevant, but isn't sure how the prosecution can overcome a hearsay objection. He says Dr. Browning didn't lay general foundation for any and all C-SPAN material. He agrees with the defense's objection. This is what is happening inside the courtroom right now. We're going to get reaction to the latest out of that courtroom when our legal panel joins us. Eric, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep,
Appreciate
Mark
it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, Mark Eiglarsh and Mercedes Coleman will join us live next.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.